I love talking about old League of Legends, and seems like many of you do as well, given my most successful videos on the channel pertain to the old days. We talked about overpowered items that were taken out, tons of old abilities, even some reworks in the past that ended up getting reverted. But a common topic of discussion when it comes to the old days would definitely pertain to which champions are the most overpowered. We always talk about OP champions. It feels like every patch there's someone dominating the meta with a 54% win rate and whatnot, but I think people tend to be trigger happy when calling things OP compared to just being strong. Over the years, we've had moments where champions were sometimes too strong that it begs the question, how did they ever make it to live servers? Today I'll be going through 5 instances in the past where champions were so broken you'd wonder if the balance team really was on some of that good shit. For transparency, I haven't been around for some of these myself, so I can only infer based on what others have told me or what I've researched online. Also, should go without saying that this video is entirely subjective. Everyone has their own opinions on what is game-breaking or potentially game-breaking, so take this more as another trip down memory lane, less so definitive tier list. Also, there are a ton of these moments out there, some lasting a couple weeks to some lasting only a day. I might make a part 2 if this video does well, so without further ado, let's get started. While we're on the subject of League's omnipotent champions of old, I have something else to talk about first, Omni Heroes. Omni Heroes is a heroic fantasy casual strategy RPG featured on both the Google Play and App Store. Inside the game, you can summon heroes from a range of different factions and synergies to aid you in battle. Valkyrie Synergy housing 6 different classes, Faction Synergy also comprising 6 different classes, and Rune Synergy which is 5 groups, allowing for a wide range of party compositions to strategize around for a digestible and replayable experience. Starting today, the new Season 4 of Omni Heroes will begin, a massive expansion consisting of a new storyline, new relics, a roguelike dungeon game mode, and an updated GVG mode as well. They also have a new event taking place called Eastern Adventure, which as the name implies, is inspired by East Asian folklore and comes with 4 new heroes, Dahlia, Wukong, Panda, and Mulan. These names should be relatively familiar to you, especially Wukong, who is derived from the same origin as her own Wukong champion in League. Each of these characters have unique abilities that can be extremely helpful in taking on all the new content with this season. If you use my link to download the game or scan my QR code, new players will receive 999 free triple pulls, while returning players will get extra rewards from the Glorious Return special event. So if you're looking for a new game to kill time with for the summer, check out Omni Heroes using my link in the description. For now though, let's get back to talking about League's OP champions. Arguably the most notoriously overpowered champion dating all the way back to the start of the game would have to be Xin Zhao on release. Anytime there's a discussion on who is the most OP champion known to man, this guy's name always pops up multiple times in the comments. Supposedly, the release version was so offensively strong that anytime I asked a friend about this, they would just give me a 1,000-yard stare like they were reliving past traumas. Concrete information and numbers were hard to find, especially since we had to take into account items and overall stat balancing back in the day, neither of which were archived. But overall, it was simply a case of having numbers that were way too overtuned given how elementary his skill was back in the day. Xin Zhao had some freaky stuff in his moveset. His passive is similar to the one he has now, where every 3rd auto attack restores HP, with the amount increasing every 2 levels. He was the same as the present day one, just without the cooldown refresh mechanic because that was on his W, which gave passive attack speed, and then when activating it, he would gain more attack speed and cause all of his autos to lower cooldowns, basically allowing him to get more than 3 seconds worth of refund depending on how fast his attack speed was. Battlecry had a 7-second duration, theoretically letting you acquire 7 to 14 seconds of cooldown refund, which essentially meant Xin Zhao's W was the precursor to the old Spear Shojin passive. Audacious Charge is the same dash ability, only it gave him bonus armor for a short while and even more cooldown refund on his abilities, so he had 2 abilities that refunded cooldowns, not just 1. I tried to find the specific numbers on this, but I couldn't, so I don't know if it was a mistype or if he actually did reduce cooldowns, but in any case, it was a fairly sizable AoE with a 40% slow for 2 seconds, far more substantial than his 0.5 second 30% slow he has right now, and apparently you used to be able to dash even while rooted. Finally, Crescent Sweep was an AoE attack with huge base damage plus 25% current health, soon after giving you an 80 second 30 to 50 armor and magic resist buff based on rank. From early patch notes, Xin Zhao was the ultimate masher. He would charge at someone and repeatedly beat them down until they died, then move on to the next one. With this W granting persistent CDR, you could basically turbo mash Q, W, and E over and over and over again. There's one very blurry clip of Hotshot GG getting a 1v5 penta by literally just auto-attacking people until they all died. Imagine a champion with a 0 cooldown dash, tons of healing, tons of armor and magic resist, a knock-up every 3rd auto attack, and tons of attack speed. We already get to experience that every now and then with the Fed Master Yi or Jax, but this was Xin Zhao at base, regardless of build. 1v1ing him was next to impossible since he could chain knock up you with his Q always being active, and you could never run away from him either due to his 0 cooldown dash. Once he got level 6, you could not be on the same screen as him or else he would just kill you. Up until he got a mini rework in Season 2, it was nothing but nerfs for him. He was basically a Master Yi without the risk. Continuing with champions on release, the next one's gonna be a LeBlanc. According to recounts by players, LeBlanc was so broken she got hotfixed within 2 days. That might not seem like a lot given how fast people get hotfixed nowadays, but back in the day, getting nerfed within 2 days was practically unheard of. In a similar fashion to Xinjiao, LeBlanc was overtuned to all hell, but in addition to a higher stat line, there was a bug on release where her Q would do double damage. So the instant you hit level 2 and subsequently had a way to detonate Sigil of Silence, it used to be called Silence before being renamed to Malice. She could ignite QW you and you would instantly die. Oh yeah, I never did go over LeBlanc's old Q in a removed abilities episode. Yeah, it used to silence people, for 2 seconds in fact. So if you did Q then Alt Q, that was 4 seconds of silence. I should make a video discussing silence in more detail, but in a nutshell, imagine not being able to do basically anything for 4 seconds. You couldn't use abilities, active items, or even summoner spells. You just had to stand there and take the L or hope you had basic attack DPS. So if my math is correct, at level 2, LeBlanc's Q would deal 160 damage twice for a total of 320, and then her W would do 90 damage more for 410. If we assume a base AP of, I don't know, 20, that's an extra maybe 50-60 damage for 470, and then Ignite which did 50 base plus 20 per level at the time of her release for 70 more damage, but while Ignite was on cooldown, if you had the Burning Embers Mastery, it would give 10 extra AP. So LeBlanc would Ignite first, get 10 more AP, which meant, I don't know, another 20-30 more damage on her Q and W, so that is 570. Yeah, that's actually a champion's entire health bar, what the hell? You could do all of this while silencing your target for 2 seconds as well, that's pretty insane. Every single time I look back on the overpowered champs of yesteryear, I think what makes them stand out a lot more compared to now is because the game was a lot more straightforward back then. They had a lot more point and click abilities, more stat checky stuff. Even the super OP champs today have some semblance of counterplay in light of skill shots or more mechanical execution required, whereas in the past it was all point and clicks or a contest of numbers. In the case of LeBlanc and Xinjiao, they were so overtuned on release, they could one-tap you with their respective combos, and there was nothing you could do about it since you were also playing a stat checker, and they obviously had more stats than you did. Speaking of stats, did you know that the record for the highest win rate of all time in League of Legends was actually held by one of the most unpopular champions in the game prior to his VGU this year? Yes, my friends, Scarner holds the record to this very day, I believe. During the class rework project between seasons 5 through 7, the one where they basically went through the entire roster to update them, the first wave of changes was on 4 juggernauts, Garen, Darius, Mordekaiser, and Scarner. This went on to be one of the most chaotic updates of all time as it coincided with that year's Worlds patch. I believe Darius and Mordekaiser both had a 100% big ban rate. If they weren't banned, they were played. Meanwhile in solo queue, Scarner was out here clapping cheeks with a win rate of over 65%, reaching 73 within the first 25 minutes of the game. That is the highest normal win rate ever recorded. Obviously you have champs that get disabled or whatnot for exploits or random game-breaking bugs, but no, this was just Scarner being egregiously overpowered. Whether it was because the total sample size was not high enough for the law of large numbers to balance things out, or if it was because he was just that overtuned, but Scarner was a beast. Just like Xinjiao, he was near impossible to deal with after a certain point. Tons of damage with Q, tons of attack and movement speed with his passive, even more movement speed with W, and a big shield with infinite uptime at 40% CDR, insanely high base damage on all of his abilities relative to how fast he could spam them, so on and so forth. What made him especially oppressive was that Scarner's Fracture basically could refresh itself if he tagged enough enemies. Each time Scarner stunned or suppressed the target, that amount of CC duration would get refunded on Fracture, and he could tag up to 6 enemies with it. So if you marked enough targets, Scarner could get Fracture back up and repeat the cycle over and over and over again. That's why Fracture got hit with an extremely hard nerf in the hotfix not even a week after he got reworked. He lost so much damage and gained more cooldown to kill a large chunk of his uptime. Then afterwards they went and nerfed his durability, tempo, and base AP all at once, since if you remember, Scarner used to be a Spellblade abuser. The hotfix may not look all that significant, and it wasn't, which is why for the remainder of Season 5 they kept nerfing him across the board. It's still crazy to think the record for the highest win rate was owned by one of the least played champions of all time. I do recall there was that one AMA someone posted on Reddit about how he won a game against a Scarner and it got like 4,000 likes or something. Okay, so this next one might be an obscure one in the eyes of most people considering it lasted all but a single day, but trust me when I say everyone who played the game during this time made absolutely certain to ban the motherfucker on site or else they insta-lost the game. I bring you Gallo in patch 7.21. This was a doozy. To incentivize a more damage-oriented build after they realized full tank Gallo was a bit overpowered, and in fairness it was, they gave him a ton of AP ratios in this kit, and I mean a ton. Passive went from 40% AP to 70% AP, that's already a fairly sizable buff. Shield of Duran got AP scaling on his damage mitigation, while Justice Punch got 20% more AP. The base values of his W and E were both taking down quite a bit, but what really set him off was the buffs to his Q. Winds of War lost a bit of base damage but gained 15% bonus AP on the Gust, and then the Tornado got changed from flat percent max health to 3% AP max health per tick. Yes, you heard me right, per tick. Prior to 7.21, the max was 6% max health damage across 3 ticks, for 2% each tick. But with this, it got changed to 9% AP max health. If you have 100 AP, that's 9% max health, at 200 AP, 18%, 300 AP, 27%, 400 AP, 36%. By this point, Gallo likely has dead cap to jump you to 6 to 700. 700 AP meant 63% HP. Let that sink in for a moment. Even in the early to mid game with just 1 to 200 AP, this guy had a long range AoE projectile that could wave clear and lane harass at the same time, chunking you for a quarter of your health per shot. It was kind of hard to avoid this attack too, given its massive coverage, and even if you tried to go in, you had to deal with the guy who through his base Q, passive and E had like 300% AP ratio in damage. The best part? This was on the PBE for 2 weeks and it still made it to live servers. Gallo was so insane he got hotfixed the very next day. 7.21 came out October 25th, the hotfix came on October 26th, cutting the AP ratios from 3% AP per tick to 1%. While perhaps not as absurd as the first two in terms of the lasting trauma it placed on the community, I think the fact that he had to get hotfixed overnight was a testament to how bad things could have gotten if they didn't address this. Last but not least, let's talk about a modern day champion, Mr. Aelius, the man who popularized the 200 years meme. I made 2 separate videos on the guy and even included him in a ton of overloaded champions videos, but unlike the previous 4 champs who all had insanely disgusting win rates and or pick ban rates, Aelius was actually the opposite. He basically started with a negative win rate when he came out, even though there was no shortage of evidence depicting how broken he could potentially be. That's why I want to include him in this video. Aelius never had a moment where he was at like 65% win rate or something, nor was he even that big of a presence in solo queue given the sheer difficulty floor of the champion. But holy sh*, this guy, in tandem with the items he could build at the time, was just insane. Aelius had to possibly be the most gutted champion in the history of the game in between when he came out to when he received his first buff. He got nerfed in 9.24, then in 10.1, then in 10.2, then in 10.3, then in 10.4, then in 10.6, then in 10.9. He got a small buff in 10.11, but I'm pretty sure this was a universal buff given to every marksman anyway. Then he got nerfed in 10.13, 10.15. In the span of less than a year, he got 9 patches of nerfs, with many of them being very significant nerfs, I might add. Practically everything had to get nerfed. Damage, cooldowns, features, interactions, ranges, base stats, the whole 9 yards. It was unfathomable how much power was nested in this man that we could only truly appreciate in pro play, while players were fumbling with him in solo queue. Unlike the old champions, Aelius' dominance was fairly well documented given there was extensive media coverage of him and the fact that this was close to 2020 where people are recording everything they come across. Though he could only ever have 2 weapons at a time, not only did each of them serve a distinct purpose, but they had different synergies with each other, allowing for close to a dozen weapon combinations. Calibrum gave him insane range and sniping power once having been global. Infernum gave him AoE coverage, having arguably more teamfight pressure than even Jinx or Sivir, the teamfight masters. Crescendum gave him immense DPS when you stacked up his chakrams, and you know what? Why not? Let's give him a turret, which by the way had some funky interactions with Calibrum. My editor must have shown you the clip already where Sneaky was shooting someone from like 3 screens away with a turret paired with the sniper rifle. It was freaking hilarious. Anyways, Gravitum gave him point and click lockdown, and Severum gave him lifesteal. Aelius was that kid on the playground who said his superpower was that he had every superpower. Nowadays, hardly anyone ever notices him because they brought his power budget to the same level as everyone else. But imagine Aelius on release if he never got nerfed, and now that a considerable number of ADC mains have mastered him and actually learned the ins and outs of his kit, I genuinely wonder how strong he could be. And it's not like this guy requires elaborate team coordination to play well, he's fully self-contained, it's just his kit was so different from conventional understandings of champions that people had to get used to that, so he very well could have had the same presence in solo queue that he did in pro play. Clips of him nuking entire teams with Infernum, 1v4ing with Crescendum, sniping people from 3 screens away with Calibrum, turbo train tanking with Severum. Out of morbid curiosity, a part of me wants to see day 1 Aelius in the present era and see just how crazy he would be. I mean, look at this. Aelius pulls out a 1v4 with a gold deficit. No other marksman could have escaped that situation. I don't care who they are. What's funny to think about is that while all 5 of these were practically game-shattering, there are still so many more moments I haven't talked about. Season 3 Cassidy, Akali rework on release, Nasus with the 1-to-1 AP ratio bug, AP Tryndamere, Warwick on patch 4.20, aka Weedwick, Camille when Precision Protocol could crit, Gangplank rework on release, Shaco's clone once being a direct copy of him, not a weaker one. So many more I can talk about. Tell you what, if this video does well, I'll make a second one. And on that note, be sure to let me know in the comments down below if there are any in particular you want me to go over. For now, if you enjoyed the video, it would be great if you could leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter @Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other old League of Legends videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.